batted up. Oh, God! Stokely down the sideline. Can they catch him? Stokely! Wow! Touchdown!
We all thought, though, that when we saw Barnes fall off that train, though, okay, he's dead.
A gift. And with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Pass is caught! Down the sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're going to get.
John Allcorn, this guy, nobody works harder. This guy is a future superstar in the media business.
Keep up the good work, man. I like your style.
But I personally I've just not seen someone like yourself who has the passion and the energy and the drive to make your career a thing.
We would be honored if you would join us.
That's maybe the coolest intro I've ever seen.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever episode of the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. This network has been a long time coming. A lot of things have happened behind the scenes since sometime last year. So I thank you so much to Tom McClure and everybody that is going to be a part of this network. I'm your host for tonight's program, John Allcorn of the John Allcorn Show. So much has happened into the NFL and free agency. So really, let's just get into the thick of it. Christy, I'm breaking this up first. The Dallas Cowboys trade Amari Cooper, which isn't the problem here. The Cowboys trade Amari Cooper for a 5th and 6th round pick. I have no problem with the Cowboys trading Amari Cooper because obviously he's their numbers a little over 3,000 yards. We can break down those numbers and everything else. The point is, the trading Amari Cooper is not the problem. But if you traded nearly 2 first-round picks in 2019, you basically get nothing. You basically get nickels and dimes. You barely have enough to buy a Diet Pepsi at the gas station. You practically got it for free. It's absolutely a disgrace. The GM for the Cowboys needs to be fired. Christy, myself, anybody can be a better GM and get a better deal. It's not like he was a slump. Now, if he had like a terrible year or two, then I can understand if he completely fell off like Kevin White in Chicago. Sorry for that for Chicago Bear fans out there. Football is about family. It's about decisions. It's about making the right decisions. Hence why you shouldn't be working with family because that can result in bad deals. In business, especially in sports, there are bad deals. This is a bad deal. Have you ever been so desperate to leave a party? Have you ever been so desperate to leave that relationship? Have you ever been so desperate to get out of that terrible movie, Fast and Furious, the last Fast and Furious movie? Yes, Vin Diesel, I'm looking at you. The Cowboys' rate of desperation. We always talk about actions and words or actions, all those things. The actions speak louder than words. Whilst the stupidity speaks too. The Cowboys trade Amari Cooper, who in 2019, I did the research to go into great detail. The Dallas Cowboys gave up a first-round pick in 2019, and rightfully so. You had Cedric Wilson. This is about a year before you had a CeeDee Lamb or two coming out of the NFL draft. And then you basically traded for what? You can maybe get a kicker, a backup cornerback, somehow another backup to Cooper Rush or whoever's the backup for the Dallas Cowboys. This has to be the stupidest move in free agency I've seen in a long time. Not because you traded a player. That's not the problem. We've seen NFL teams, we've seen NFL franchises trade players, good players away. That's not the problem. The problem is what you got back in return. If you're going to invest in something, you better make sure you get something out of it. The Cowboys didn't get anything out of it when they traded Amari Cooper away. Cedric Wilson has gone to the Dolphins. We'll talk about that a little bit on the John Allcorn Show on the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. But if you're looking at this from a football basis, just a basic fan perspective. All right, you have CeeDee Lamb. You have, I believe, you're another receiver that they just signed a big contract to. You could have at least gotten some higher picks to either better your offensive line or your defensive front. Because whether, yes, the Cowboys had some bright spots on the defensive side of the ball in terms of much better than they were in 2020 or 2019, you still have some issues with the offensive line. Zeke has his big contract. So what I'm trying to understand, and frankly, I don't think there is anything to understand. So my question to you folks is, did the Cowboys make a mistake in settling in the trade for Amari Cooper? Again, folks, I don't have a problem with the Cowboys trading Amari Cooper. The line and the problem is when you give a 5th to 6th round pick. Callum, I know you don't watch football. I understand. But in sports, you watch sports. You're in sports industry. When you have a deal, whether it's in basketball, baseball, or football, it's like, think about this, or Callum, we're both Padre fans. It's like if the Padres gave up Fernando Tatis Jr. for the last pick in the draft. Does that make any sense? You're so desperate to move on from a player. Yes, he was very productive in terms of his numbers, and obviously $17 million, he was getting paid a lot of money. But the point is, in any deal, you should get something out of it. When you go to a job, whether it's working on your relationship with God or getting a car, learning how to drive, you get something out of it. You get experience. The Cowboys got nothing. It makes them look so much more like they have no idea what they're doing. The GM for the Cowboys, I believe that is Jerry Jones' son, is completely out of his league. A 5th and 6th round pick. I could have gotten that for you for free. I could have given you advice. The point is why we have honesty, not just on the John Allcorn Show, not just on other shows that are coming out this year, later this year, next year, is that if you're going to make a deal, Jerry Jones or Stephen Jones, I believe is the GM, understand what goes on and what you went through to get him. Now, obviously, if you traded a first-round pick to get him and he only got like 1,000 yards in 3 years, and that's a little bit different. He averaged over 1,000 yards per season. No, I'm not a Amari Cooper fan. I've been very critical of him in terms of injuries and being overpaid. That's not the point. And it's not because you just gave up a first-round pick. It's what you didn't get in return. Like Tam Fuller said, it was like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. It's like making a peanut butter sandwich without the jelly. Obviously, peanut butter and jelly go together. The point is, folks, my last thought on this was you got a lot of free agency of a lot of it to talk about before we celebrate the end. Baseball is back. Padres, I'm so sorry about Fernando Tatis Jr. If I'm the Cowboys, moving forward, it's going to be the same thing over and over. And I hate to give you this honest advice, but at the same time, I probably don't. I just don't see anything changing. It's just a vent session for the first one, because if you really even break it down even more, this one makes it even worse, folks. The Cowboys, when they gave up a first-round pick for Amari Cooper in 2019, from 2019 to 2021, keyword, from 2019, when they first got Amari Cooper, to the end of the 2021 season when the Cowboys had Cooper, they paid him $54 million for 3 seasons. Yes, he was consistent in terms of, he was good, not great, not elite, not the best, had some injuries. The same thing that happened in Oakland. And they paid him $54 million for 3 seasons. So, guy that you paid the hats off for, you gave up for Kevin White value. How does that make any sense? At all. I understand they move on, you got picks, and you got weapons. $54 million for 3 seasons. He was averaging almost $18 million a season. Christian Wilson says, hi, John. This is so exciting. Definitely is. A lot of things on the works, but I'm super excited. Thankful for Cal and everybody on the network that is taking time to build the Intergalactic Sports Entertainment Network. We know moving forward, a lot of things are going to happen. Read a couple more comments before we go on. The Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network says Browns got him for free almost. You know, a lot more with the Browns. Cooper or Landry? Landry, Cooper. You talk about it in Miami. You ended up short time with Jay Cutler, and now with the Browns, and now I don't know what's going to happen to him. I really hope he deserves to be on the contender. He and Allen Robinson are phenomenal receivers. You get outlooked. He's got guys like Hopkins and Hill and so many other guys in the league, and Odell with the Rams before the injury with the Rams. But I definitely think he definitely deserves a shot. Kirsty Wilson also says, I feel sad that Amari Cooper got traded to the Browns because I do like him. I do wish him the best of luck in Cleveland, though. I do feel bad for him. Now, on the Browns side of this, though, I'm talking about before we move on, so they got a lot of free agency talk before we got another show coming up tonight on the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. If you're Cleveland, Jarvis Landry, if you honestly look at the numbers, obviously, overall this year wasn't that great. Great leader, put up decent numbers. Obviously, Odell was injured. You're telling me you're going to replace Jarvis Landry with Amari Cooper? Have we ever had Amari Cooper in somehow similar conversations to Jarvis Landry? Is Amari Cooper somehow a substitution or a better substitution than Jarvis Landry in Cleveland? Because the same issue happens with Cleveland. Why I think Baker Mayfield is a bum and he'll never win the Super Bowl in Cleveland, or frankly at all in the NFL. He has to rely on that running game. If you're going to evenly distribute the football, hopefully Baker Mayfield is healthy. But if he's going to do to Amari Cooper what he did to Odell, or of course Baker Mayfield overthrowing the receivers time and time again, how is trading Cooper? I guarantee the Browns, they didn't get much for him, so it makes sense. If it doesn't work, you traded a 5th and 6th round pick, didn't really give up much to get Amari Cooper. But the point is, in terms of production, not in terms of what they got for Cooper, just talk about in terms of production. It just doesn't make any sense, especially with who the Browns have at the quarterback position. Kirsty Wilson also says, I could be a better GM for the Cowboys than Jerry Jones. You know, Kirsty, let's relax. You and I could be a better GM than Jerry Jones. I've given free advice to head coaches and GMs. Obviously, every single time we're going to ignore just a random person on a network. Kirsty Wilson says, Jerry Jones is not only the owner of the Cowboys, but the GM as well. I agree, and that's part of the main problem with the Dallas Cowboys. He's had the GM title since he bought the team in 1988, and it hasn't done anything for over 20 years. This is the part I think is the problem. Even if they got a GM, even if you got somebody that can help with football operations, there's just something about the Cowboys that this doesn't change. Some things never change. Christopher Maybe from the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, and also for this network, he also asked who is the biggest surprise free agent signed so far? We'll kind of get into that in some of these trades so far, but I think in terms of not necessarily the biggest surprise, I answer part of that question. I think the biggest surprise in terms of how much they didn't get in return was Cowboys trading Amari Cooper to the Browns. Not because you just traded to the Browns, you gave up a 5th and 6th round pick for literally a receiver that averaged over 1,000 yards. But that's neither here nor there here. Chrissy Wilson also says, this kind of torment Cowboys fans like me have been dealing with for years will only end if either Jerry Jones passes or sells the team. He's never going to sell the team. It's Jerry Jones' way or the highway. And most of the time, Jerry's way obviously doesn't work. But again, folks, John Allcorn Show on the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. One of the biggest, though, trades in the NFL happened a couple of days ago, I believe last week and weekend. The Denver Broncos got their quote-unquote franchise quarterback. People have asked Isaiah and others, are you back to being a Broncos fan because they got Russell Wilson? No. I'm sticking with my Bengals. I don't care what happens. I am a Bengals fan. Who day. The point is, though, when we talk about this trade, what Seattle gets, of course, Drew Lock, great defensive end, and Shelby Harris, have Noah Fant, up-and-coming tight end, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 1 fifth-round pick. When you're looking at this deal, I don't know who really wins at the moment. Because according to reports that we're seeing out there on articles is that this is Pete Carroll's last year in Seattle. And with them being in rebuild mode, not knowing who the next franchise quarterback is going to be for the Seattle Seahawks, this is going to be the worst year I think Seattle has had. I think probably before Pete Carroll when they went 7-9 and made the playoffs with, I believe, the former Bills running back before Marshawn Lynch came into Seattle. I believe it was Fred Jackson, some other running back. Quarterback was Matt Hasselbeck. Seattle moving forward, they know their time was done. Russell Wilson injury, they haven't had the right GM. Before the 2020 season started, before the 2020 season started, Russell Wilson was a top 10 most sacked quarterback. But we don't talk about it. But if Tom Brady was a top 10, and again, I'm not saying Russell Wilson's top 3 best quarterback of all time, but if that was Tom Brady being talked about, if that was Drew Brees or somebody other quarterback being talked about, then it would be a problem. So all I ask for people is to be consistent. But the Broncos also receive a 4th-round pick along with Super Bowl winning Pro Bowl quarterback Russell Wilson. I just don't know. As much as I love Russell Wilson, I think he is a very good quarterback. I agree with Christian Wilson. It says, I hope the change of scenery will be helpful for Russell Wilson. I hope it does too, because I support obviously what he stands for, but I think I think Russell Wilson with Denver, I don't know how it's going to work. Because now Vic Fangio's gone. I think Pat Shermer's also gone. What type of offense is going to run? Because in Seattle, it was run, throw the deep ball and lock it. Now you trade away Noah Fant, who's a middle ground shortstop tight end. And then you have, of course, Cortland Sutton hopefully can stay 100% healthy. Jared Jeudy has to step up in 2022 for the Denver Broncos. For them to see somewhat of a continued, hopefully deep positive run for the Denver Broncos in terms of not just the regular season, but going into the playoffs in 2023 and beyond, Jared Jeudy has to step up as a primary receiver for the Denver Broncos. I believe the issue in 2019, he was practically sponsored by Butterfingers. Couldn't catch a football. 2020, of course, he continued to get better. This wasn't a huge step up. But in 2022, Jared Jeudy has to be the primary receiver. I'll be curious to see, though, how Russell Wilson adjusts in terms of the offense. It's not going to be this run, because even though you have your second-year running back, Javonte Williams, I believe at the UNC, can't remember the college he went to, Melvin Gordon's going to be gone. Some of y'all know how I feel about Melvin Gordon coming to Denver in terms of that game where they could have beat the Chiefs towards the end of the regular season. So you got Javonte Williams in the backfield, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I don't know who their tight end is. What type of offense is it going to be? Are you going to mash it up a little bit? Is it going to be completely reinvented for what it was in Seattle? I want to see how this offense is. I'm just not too confident or more questionable about how Russell Wilson's going to do in Denver. Because while he is a very good quarterback, he hasn't necessarily been very, in terms of, we talk about Brady or when Bruce was in the league and some of these other guys, he's very good, very talented. But with this team, even if they address the offensive line, I'm just not sure how far the Broncos can go because of Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, because of what the Chargers are doing. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But breaking news, though, out of the NFL, Christy Wilson, your Dallas Cowboys re-signed DeMarcus Lawrence, 2-time Pro Bowler, defensive end, a 3-year, $30 million deal, $10 million per season. So we'll see what happens in this trade, though. Obviously, I think right now Denver won the trade. You get a Pro Bowl quarterback who's been in the Super Bowl. You know what they say. If you can beat them, why not also join them? That's what Russell Wilson did. So we'll see what happens with Denver and Seattle next season. This one, you would think this was an episode of their Kardashians. Rodgers returns to the Packers. It's on a deal that's going to be evenly distributed out the next couple of years, so it's more team-friendly instead of like 40 this year, 40 next year, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. This is one of the more annoying things in the NFL. We always talk about Rodgers, what's going to happen? Is he going to go to Denver? You saw somebody have a meltdown on the draft show last year on the MI6 Sports Network. This is not a shocker. This is not a surprise. But this also was concern in terms of a little bit of football operations or decisions in the football operations. Let me be clear. 2020 draft, the Packers get Jordan Love in the first round. I have no problem with the Packers drafting a quarterback to quote-unquote replace Rodgers. But when you trade for a quarterback in the first round, when you draft a quarterback in the first round, you're clearly communicating that sooner or later, Rodgers is either going to retire or they're going to trade him. 2 years later, you re-sign Rodgers, and now people are thinking, what in anyone's green earth is the point for drafting Jordan Love? You have little to no gameplay at all. He has no trade value. Jimmy Garoppolo has a lot more trade value than, of course, Jordan Love. Jordan Love, in a short time, didn't play well, obviously, because Rodgers got all the reps. It's not the same thing with Rodgers when Brett Favre was his starting quarterback at the time for the Green Bay Packers. I feel bad for Jordan Love, but also at the same time, whoever the GM is for the Packers, we need to have a conversation. Callum McClurg says, let's freaking go. Yes, I'm super happy. The network, the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network is out. Got a lot of shows coming up and a show that I've done before, but we'll talk about that later. Carson Wentz gets traded to the Washington Commanders. Carson Wentz has been a bum since 2017 injury. It's injuries, inconsistency, and I don't see how him going to Washington is going to be any different. Anybody that was surprised that the Colts moved on from Carson Wentz clearly either didn't watch any football last year or clearly is so blind to their loyalty. Carson Wentz. I'm talking about him as a quarterback. I love what he stands for in his faith. That's not the problem. I'm talking about the Colts missed the playoffs. And not just missing the playoffs, you get decimated by the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Carson Wentz all year. If it wasn't for Jonathan Taylor, the Colts wouldn't have that record they had in 2021. I believe the Colts had 9 to 10 or 8 to 9 wins last year. Let me look that up because that just doesn't make that just infuriates me how people are saying, "Oh, Carson Wentz this." No, the Colts last year, if I remember correctly, they had. Let me look at it. The Colts last year, I believe they were 9-8. Take away Jonathan Taylor because he saw multiple games of Carson Wentz. Didn't even crack the 200-yard mark. 100 yards here, 100 yards here, 100 yards here. A lack of offense consistency from the quarterback position. Starting off 0-3 and only had 8 wins the rest of the season. 9 wins the rest of the season. So you started off the year 0-3. They had 9-5, I believe. 9-5 the rest of the season. Missing the playoffs is not an option for the Colts. Their roster on paper, on the field, is built to win right now. You have Jonathan Taylor, second-round pick in 2020 out of, I believe, Wisconsin. Great offensive line. They got some great defensive players. They could have traded for Khalil Mack, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. From the Commanders side of this, we talk about desperation with the Cowboys, trading Amari Cooper to the Browns. The Washington Commanders still don't have their franchise quarterback, and they never will. Last year was a complete surprise in terms of defensive production. Do I think Ron Rivera is the right head coach? I think this is going to be his year to determine in 2023 whether he will coach again. I'm sorry, his last few years in Carolina, average. You still haven't been able to get the quarterback position, average. Obviously, Alex Smith, of course, we know the story of that. He's back doing in terms of broadcasting TV. That's great. But right now, you're stuck with Tyler Heineke last year. You signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. Obviously, him being injured and missing the season, I don't blame the GM or coach on that. Things happen. Injuries happen in sports. But you get Carson Wentz because you settled. There were rumors, though, even though the Washington Commanders offered more for Russell Wilson than the Denver Broncos did. But, of course, the GM at Seattle obviously makes sense. They don't want to play Russell Wilson in the NFC. They don't want Russell Wilson to be in the NFC at all. This is going to continue to be the NFC least. Yes, Terry McLaurin, running back, you had, I believe, your 2020 round pick who had a very good year in 2020. 2021 was obviously a whole different situation, a whole different scenario. The Washington Commanders are a mess, and they're going to continue to be a mess. Their offense is going to be bland and be boring. Either, even if Carson Wentz stays healthy, like he did part of last year, is he going to be consistent? You had Paris Campbell, you had Jonathan Taylor, you had all those guys. Still managed to start the year 0-3 and still managed to miss the playoffs because you got decimated by the Jaguars. I don't see it changing with the Washington Commanders. I don't see Carson Wentz being a franchise quarterback anymore. Titans re-signed Harold Landry to a 5-year, $87 million extension with $52.5 guaranteed. Defense-wise, the Tennessee is set. They have no problem. They have no issues. The issue now is long-term. Ryan Tannehill is not the guy. I'm tired of excuses. You can say part of the year. Oh, he didn't have Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry wasn't healthy in the playoffs. All these lame, sorry excuses. Sorry doesn't get you anywhere but to sleeping in the best Western hotel in the playoffs. And Tennessee now, yet again, just disappoints in the playoffs. So you can go back 2019, 2020. Derrick Henry is healthy then. Go straight to the AFC Championship game. Lost. Okay, fine. First year of Tennessee. Go to 2020. You lose, I believe, in the wild card round. The wild card or division round again. Sorry, you lost in the first or second round. Again, another disappointing playoff loss. Go last year, another disappointing playoff loss. Well, you lost against my Bengals by 3 points, by a game-winning field goal. The same thing over and over, regardless if Derrick Henry is on the field or not. The production at the quarterback position in Tennessee hasn't been there forever in this 21st century. Consistently. Go to Ryan Tannehill last year. You can always make excuses even before Derrick Henry went down. We're going to look up Ryan Tannehill and his numbers because the only excuses that are going to fly is when you're sitting at a best Western hotel in the playoffs while the other teams are contending. Because this is absolutely disgraceful that anybody would defend Ryan Tannehill at this point. Let's look at his stats here real quick. 21 touchdowns, 14 picks, arguably his worst year in terms of quarterback rating since his rookie year in 2012 in Miami. He had one good year, 2015, 24 touchdowns, 12 picks. That's still 1-to-1 interception ratio. Really not that great. Or 2-to-1. Not that great. Average, boring. I give it 2020. I'll give you that. He threw from his 4,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 picks. Very similar to Carson Wentz's year in 2017. But Ryan Tannehill is not the guy to put your team on your back. So when you re-sign Harold Landry, you get players that help you on defense. That's great. You can always re-sign, but you're in denial. They still don't have their franchise quarterback. So it's great. I'm so happy Tennessee re-signed Harold Landry to the 5-year, $52.5 million guaranteed deal. But if you still don't address the issues with the offense in terms of the quarterback position, you're not going to be in a Super Bowl. You're not going to truly contend for a Super Bowl. Cowboys re-signed Michael Gallup to a 5-year, $62.5 million deal after trading Amari Cooper to the Cleveland Browns for a 5th and 6th round pick. I definitely think it's great. You got Michael Gallup, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got your tight ends. I think you got Tony Pollard, you got Ezekiel Elliott. It'd be really curious to see moving forward in 2022 and beyond what happens with the offense with the Dallas Cowboys. I definitely think it's a good signing. I'm just curious to see what happens moving forward for the Cowboys. The Cardinals re-signed Zach Ertz to a 3-year deal, taking the highest paid tight end right now in the NFL. Great, you re-sign him. He's a decent weapon. But the Cardinals, with this current squad, you already re-signed Cliff Kingsbury. But if that same squad, even with the healthy DeAndre Hopkins, I don't see them winning a Super Bowl. It's great you re-signed Zach Ertz, great veteran leader, can put weapons on, can help you a little bit in the red zone here and there. There's still too many issues. There's still so much drama. Your agent put out a statement on Twitter, which a lot of that stuff in terms of football drama or football business should have been handled behind the scenes. It's great they re-signed Zach Ertz, but it still doesn't address the issues. If the Cardinals don't win playoff games, keyword, a more than one playoff game, 2022 will be a failure. Next one here can maybe be a little bit of a surprise to me, but it wasn't a surprise to others. Tom Brady retired 40 days ago, and now Tom Brady is back in the NFL. A couple of things I have to say about this before we move forward here. I feel terrible for Falcons fans. I feel terrible for Saints fans. I feel terrible for Tim. There's a chance maybe that the Panthers are going to try and get a certain type of quarterback. Who knows? But maybe they had a chance if they get a certain quarterback, or if the Falcons, whatever happens with them, maybe they can get something going. The NFC South was wide open for about 6 weeks. And Tom Brady said, I'm coming back. Well, it's kind of a surprise to me. It's great that my childhood in the NFL is not over. It's great for the Bucs. Godwin gets franchise tag despite being injured most of the year. That definitely could tell me now, outside of one or two players that they lost their free agency, a lot of those guys are going to be coming back. The Bucs are now in contention for the playoffs, of course, with Tom Brady. But for any NFC South fan outside of the Bucs, I truly feel sorry for you. Y'all got false hope. Tom Brady is back. Christian Wilson says, I'm talking about the Denver Broncos trading for Russell Wilson. I hope the change of scenery will be helpful for Russell Wilson. I hope it does. I think he'll be great, but we'll see. Moving forward, though, even if nothing happens, Broncos still win this trade because Pete Carroll is gone after this year. New head coach, new GM versus a quarterback who can take you to the playoffs. That is my answer right there. Christian Wilson says, I think Carson Wentz is going to get ripped around like a rag doll. Yes, I don't think Carson Wentz is going to do anything in the NFL. You talk to NFL Washington Commanders. Because the thing is, you have the issues with the offensive line in Philadelphia. Now, last year, Washington just lost their starting right guard to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So now you have little to no protection of a guy who isn't guaranteed to stay healthy, who isn't going to put up MVP numbers, who isn't going to put the team on his back when it matters. We don't know what their defensive identity is at this point because last year it was a huge disappointment. There were even rumors that the Washington Commanders contacted every football team about their quarterback. If you have a team, I don't think this has ever happened in NFL history, but if you have an NFL team that calls every other 31 teams in the league for their starting franchise quarterback, there's no way you're going to contend. Talk about the biggest reek of desperation I have heard, I have absolutely seen in my time watching football, in my time listening to watching articles and doing sports podcasts for almost 3 years. The Washington Commanders called about every football team for their starting quarterback. Come on. Tim Fielder says, I think the Colts will find with an average quarterback. I agree. I think if the Colts go after Jordan Love, it's like a Jacoby Brissett situation. You don't have a lot of game tape on him. You don't know what he could or couldn't do. It isn't necessarily having his strengths, but you don't know his weaknesses because there isn't a lot of film on him. So maybe they do like a Jacoby Brissett type deal with him in terms of 1 year. Let's see what happens, and then we can address financially moving forward. The Minnesota Vikings give Kirk Cousins a 1 year, fully guaranteed $35 million contract. I guarantee at first you're like, oh my gosh, $35 million. He's going to make $40 million this year. Let's kind of talk about this and break this down a little bit. They make $30 million next year. The deal has 2 voidable years. So most likely, I think after this year, the Vikings can move on. The cap hit is lowered to $31.25 million to what it was. So guaranteed, $15 million of that deal, this new deal that Kirk Cousins got, is going to be paid by this time next year. who even then the cap hit is even less. Now with the Minnesota Vikings, new head coach, new GM, I don't know possibly what they were thinking. I bet you the Minnesota Vikings re-signed Kirk Cousins to a new deal because they knew they couldn't afford in terms of picks or money for a veteran quarterback. They had to settle. They re-signed Kirk Cousins yet again. Not a huge surprise. Now, obviously, they don't have the draft capital for other NFL quarterbacks. Next one, though, to me, was, wow, a huge surprise on this one. The Bears trade star defensive end Khalil Mack for a second and sixth-round pick to the Chargers. The main question I'll ask y'all is, how does this help the Chargers in 2022? How does the Chargers trading for Khalil Mack help them in 2022? It helps them so much in terms of the playoffs. The Chargers are all in 2022. After it happened that game against the Raiders, and of course, Brandon Staley came on the Pat McAfee show and gave a PR, HR answer. The Chargers are ready to contend right now. They are ready to make multiple playoff wins in terms of the moves they made. Now, whether that happens or not, that is to be determined. The Chargers are all in on this team as a whole. You signed your other receiver a 3 to 4 year plus year deal. You get Khalil Mack. You have Bosa. You have other defensive ends. This defensive ends section for the Chargers defense is going to be scary in 2022. The Chargers need to be taken seriously now. They're not a laughing stock anymore. Justin Herbert, we know what he can do. He has a Patrick Mahomes type arm. He has the athleticism with his legs. He's going to get better mentally as a quarterback. It's very exciting. But on the Bears, though, side, you trade Khalil Mack, get a second and sixth-round pick. You let Allen Robinson go into free agency. You drafted Justin Fields in 2021 with the 9th overall pick. What happens moving forward? You got a new head coach. You have, of course, Matt Nagy is gone. Ryan Pace is gone. What are they going to address in the draft? What are they going to do in free agency? It's not like the Bears have a lot of it left. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, people that are watching, is that the Bears are still paying Khalil Mack's contract for 2022. So it's like the Chargers, okay, you gave up a second, sixth-round pick, and you don't necessarily have to pay him because the Bears are still having to pay him under their contract, under their cap. That is really a terrible decision for the Bears. Because if you're able to get a second, sixth-round pick, and the Chargers take on his entire contract, then it wouldn't be as bad of a decision. Christy Wilson says, kind of surprised that the Steelers signed Mitchell Trubisky. I will talk about that right after this one, Christy, because it's not, I'll give my thoughts then. This helps the Chargers on defense. This helps the offense have a much better pace. You got a top 8 pick in the Penny Sewell out of Oregon. Great offense, improving great offensive line. You got a decent running game. You're invested in your receivers. You got better defensive ends. Work on the outer line defense. And also, you signed Jackson from the New England Patriots. Jesse Jackson, I can't remember his name exactly. Star corner on a 3 to 4 year deal. You traded for Khalil Mack. You got your offensive lineman top 8 pick, the 2021 draft. I can say the Chargers, I can say, are potentially true contenders in 2022. Now, whether that happens and they actually become true contenders, we're going to have to see. But in terms of the moves they made, the Chargers are ready to win right now. Not just in the regular season, but trying to improve to get into the playoffs. Christy Wilson mentions it. The Steelers signed Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think this is that bad of a deal. I think people are completely overreacting. Even if it doesn't work out, he's gone after this year. He's gone after next year. Who do you have besides Mitchell Trubisky? It's not because you're settling. That's why you traded for Mitchell Trubisky. Mason Rudolph, he's had plenty of game film. You had Dwayne Haskins, who was drafted by the Washington Commanders, former Washington football team, who obviously handled his career a certain way, and that's unfortunate. I don't think Mitchell Trubisky is as bad as people are saying. Do I think he's a star, elite, franchise starting quarterback? No, I don't. But people act like everything in Chicago, it was all Trubisky. Leadership-wise, yes, that could be a little bit different, could be a little bit better. But some of those starts he made were really good. Do I think he's the answer? No, I do not. but the Steelers have little to no money. What do they have to lose? What hurts them? I don't understand how this is that bad move. I mean, I'm surprised because the rumors that Mitch Trubisky is going to New York. Even though New York declined, Dan Jones, fifth option. So this is last year's contract. Then Daniel Jones is a free agent in 2023. So maybe Daniel Jones goes to Seattle on a one-year deal in 2023. Who knows? I'm just theorizing crazy football things. Surprise for the Steelers, but I think Mr. Trubisky has the weapons there now. You have Dante Johnson. You have Chase Claypool. Juju, I don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't know. I think he's going to Baltimore. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Juju Smith-Schuster. They have the weapons. They have Najee Harris. Defensive-wise, you got T.J. Watt. You got guys you can address in the draft. But the Steelers, most of these picks outside of Mitchell Trubisky, heavily and relying on the draft because financially they're not doing too well after what happened with Big Ben and what they paid him. But speaking of money and the bag, the Jaguars signed former Washington Commanders starting guard Brandon Sheriff to, I believe, a 3 to 4 year deal. I wanted him in Cincinnati. The Bengals need offensive line help. This is the main free agency player I wanted the Bengals to get. But yet, the Bengals do what the Bengals do. They don't address the offensive line. It is absolutely infuriating. I'm happy for the Jaguars. They finally get the offensive line help. Again, new head coach, Doug Peterson. I'm not really too convinced of Doug Peterson, not because of what happened in, of course, Philadelphia. I just don't know. When you have an NFL offense, it takes a while for it to develop. This doesn't happen overnight. New head coach, it's not like you flip the switch week one and this offense is going to just flourish instantly. Patience is something we all need to learn, but especially in the NFL. When you want to have a certain type of scheme on offense or defense, patience. Not saying it's going to work, but you have to have patience. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's not like the Bears, they drafted Justin Fields and expected to go 16-1 last year. That is delusional. That is being impatient. Jaguars signed offensive lineman Travis Etienne. Hopefully he comes back in 2022 and is healthy. And James Robinson, that duo could be really interesting. You also got the Jaguars, I believe, signed another receiver in free agency. I just don't know how, what I guess he just wanted the bag. I can't be mad for a player just wanting to get paid. He wanted to get paid. Washington wasn't giving in to his demand, so I'm happy he got paid. I really wanted him in Cincinnati because the Bengals need the offensive line help. And, of course, the Bengals, Mike Brown, who is literally so cheaper than, of course, Homer Simpson, cheaper than so many cartoon characters, cheaper than literally anybody, cheaper than the dollar menu at McDonald's. Doesn't get the offensive line help they need. So, folks, at least let me know. Did the Bengals sign an offensive lineman or anybody in free agency? Because this is the guy I wanted from the Washington Commanders. We'll see exactly what happens. In other news, in the NFL, Dolphins signed former running back out of course, Arizona, Chase Edmonds to a deal there. I believe Matt Breida. Dolphins also signed Teddy Bridgewater to back up Tua Tagovailoa. We know what happened, of course, with last year with Tua having some issues. It's great. The Dolphins got a great running back. But on the Cardinals side of this, I'll talk about this just momentarily. I just don't see what are they going to do moving forward. You got James Conner, who's very productive last year. Kyler Murray struggling as a quarterback. DeAndre Hopkins is hopefully healthy next year. Christian Kirk gets paid, I believe, by the Jacksonville Jaguars. 3-year, $84 million. He gets like almost $21.5 million per year for the next 3 to 4 years. So outside of DeAndre Hopkins and Williams at tight end, you got James Conner. I just don't see how this offense is going to help. You still don't have the offensive line the Cardinals need. But happy for the Dolphins getting Chase Edmonds, who's great in the red zone and can be great at times in fantasy football. The Green Bay Packers cleared $19.1 million in salary cap Monday morning by releasing outside linebacker Zadarius Smith and tackle Billy Turner, which I believe them clearing with the Packers releasing Zadarius Smith and Billy Turner, that frees up more money for the Packers to re-sign Aaron Rodgers in free agency. Or no, he's not a free agent, but in terms of to re-sign Aaron Rodgers to that rumored deal to keep him for the rest of his career in Green Bay, they had to release those two players right there. Read the comments here before we continue on for the show. Christian Wilson says, breaking news, DeMarcus Lawrence is staying with the Cowboys. He signed a new deal. I'm happy the Cowboys brought him back. Consistency-wise, I don't know. I think he's a good guy, but player-wise, we'll see kind of what happens. Cowboys still have Dan Quinn, so that was definitely a rumor for a head coaching job. Happy the Cowboys were able to bring Dan Quinn back, keep him in Dallas. Big deal, though. Quandre Diggs for the Seattle Seahawks signs a 3-year, $40 million deal. $13.3 million per year. If this is Pete Carroll's last year in Seattle, regardless of what happens in 2022, regardless of the dead cap Seattle has after trading Russell Wilson to the Broncos after negotiating for weeks, and you sign a big defensive end in free agency in Quandre Diggs, 3-year deal. I'm not saying he didn't deserve to get paid, but now you have Quandre Diggs contract against the cap. Now you have Jamal Adams contract against the cap, and you don't have a starting quarterback for 2022 right now. From a GM perspective, from a football business perspective, does that make sense at all in any way, shape, or form? It does not. I don't understand the move at all with that one. A few more before we go into tonight's final thoughts and go to another show tonight on the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. The Jaguars signed Christian Kirk. That was a 4-year, $84 million deal, $21 per year for the next 4 seasons. I'm happy he got paid. I'm not saying it hurts the Arizona Cardinals, but at the same time, you got to improve the offensive line so they can have that consistency. Because if DeAndre Hopkins goes out next year, well, you got Williams, you got AJ Green. Is he going to mess up and run the wrong route in the end zone? Just kidding with that one. But we'll have to see what happens with Arizona in 2022. Dolphins signed former Cowboys receiver Cedric Wilson to I believe it was a 3 to 4 year deal. I'm happy he got paid. It's clear already. CeeDee Lamb's the number one receiver. You got, of course, I believe another receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. So you got all those weapons. That'll be fine. I'm happy for the Dolphins. And I don't understand because you already had a first-round receiver year before, and then last year had a first-round receiver to help, of course, for Tua. Tua was your franchise quarterback. You got your new head coach. We'll see what happens with that one. But again, we're going back to this one. The Chargers signed former Patriots cornerback J.C. Jackson to a 5-year, $82.5 million deal. $82.5 million deal. The Chargers are ready to contend right now. They're not just a team that's just going to be out there. They want to be the team in the playoffs. They want to be the team to be talked about this season. And the moves they're making, they are ready. Now, whether that happens or not, who knows at all in any way, shape, or form. I'm happy for the Chargers. Trevor, be excited for your Chargers in 2022. I think big things are coming. But folks, we will be right back after this quick 30-second break. Been a great show. Talked about a lot about free agency. Another one that just happened as I was on the show, so we took a break. New York signed former Bengals tight end C.J. Uzomah. I probably butchered his name. For a 3-year, $27 million deal, $8 million per year. Happy for the Jets. Needed tight end to help with Zach Wilson. You got Corey Davis. You got who you have last year, I think Mike Davis, and they started running back for the Jets. The Bengals continue to lose players in free agency yet again. I don't believe they've signed any offensive lineman in free agency. One of the former Washington Commanders starting right guard didn't get that. One another guy didn't get that. So it's definitely going to be could be a very long year for the Cincinnati Bengals. It's the same thing we've always said for years, even going all the way back to Carson Palmer. You have to have the offensive linemen. And the way those offensive linemen, and that's saying it loosely, played last year, throughout the season, throughout the playoffs, throughout the Super Bowl, it's going to be a very long year. And I wouldn't blame Joe Burrow in a year or two, if even that. If he continues to get beat, if he continues to get hit, that he's going to want to demand a trade. I don't blame him for wanting to leave Cincinnati if that happens in a year or two. Because Mike Brown, you are not addressing the offensive line. You should not be the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm absolutely ashamed and disgusted that we have to talk about you. Because yet again, as we talk about so many times, the Bengals don't have any offensive line help, and I just don't know moving forward how that is going to be any different. So hopefully the Bengals get offensive line help in the draft, or maybe something crazy happens in free agency. The John Allcorn Show, the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network, as we always are going to do for every show. Let's go into tonight's final thoughts. What a great first show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. For Trevor Williams, Christy Wilson, Casey, Candy, of course, and in the comments, Christy Wilson, Kyle McClure again, whoever was, Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. I thank you truly all so much for the support on the first ever episode of the John Allcorn Show on the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. We have a lot coming up. We have a show coming up tonight, though, with a couple of people from the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network. Can't wait to see y'all then. We thank you all so much for the support, and we will see y'all soon. God bless.
Batted up. Oh, God! Stokely down the sideline. Can they catch him? Stokely! Wow! Touchdown!
We all thought, though, that when we saw Barnes fall off that train, though, okay, he's dead.
You have a gift. And with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Pass is caught.
Down the sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
I'm the best corner in the game. When you try me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're gonna get.
John Allcorn, this guy is, nobody works harder. This guy is a future superstar in the media business.
Keep up the good work, man. I like your style.
But I personally I've just not seen someone like yourself who has the passion and the energy and the drive to make your career a thing.
We would be honored if you would join us.
That's maybe the coolest intro I've ever seen.